Fine, good morning. We are in Siman Reish Aleph of the Sif Mem Daled. Okay. Eim Hamayim She'uvim Poislim Es HaMikvah. Mayim She'uvim is not possible in the mikvah, but you give a lugim. Ad She'yiflu Toch HaMikvah Mikli. The psul is if it falls into a mikvah from a kli. Aval im nigveru hamayim ha-she'uvim chutz the mikvah. However, if he poured the water outside the mikvah, v'nimshechu v'yardu l'mikvah, and it flowed and then went into the mikvah, einam pleisim es mikvah. They do not pass the mikvah ad sheyu mechza l'mechza. Until it's mechza l'mechza. Im ha-yerov me'ak sherim mikvah kosher. If there's rov ksherim, mikvah is kosher. And this is the din which is called Hamshacha, which we're matir ad roiv. Now this is a thing that all mikvahs do, is that they generally after they collect the rainwater, it doesn't go straight into the bore. It generally goes onto cement. We'll talk about cement in a bit. Like a little area that and it flows then into the mikvah. This is to alleviate any extra chashashos. So al kol panim, you can do hamshacha ad roiv. Ketza mikvah sheish bo esrim sa. If you have a mikvah that has 20 sa or mashu, mayin ksher. V'hayam amale v'shoiv chutz mikvah, and you were pouring water outside the mikvah. V'mayim shachim v'yordim the mikvah, and the water is flowing and going into the mikvah. Bein shahayodim shachim al gabe karka, whether they are on top of ground, or b'soch siloin kiyotze boy b'dam she'ein pleisim es mikvah or kosher, or even if it goes into a pipe that wouldn't passel a mikvah, then that would be kosher. And there is some svaras about why Hamshacha works, and say that it's because it's kilo you did she'uvim, and the point of she'uvim is that you were tolish it from the karka. Now it's not mei mikvah. It's like someone did to zriya, and you put it back on the ground. It's kilo reattaches it to the ground. And so too if it's in a pipe. Harehu kosher. Afilu hishlimu la'elef sayin. Even if it were your mashlim, if it was 20 and a bit sayin in the mikvah, and then you poured in another elef sayin of shuvashim shichua kshera. Im hayasham rova barim sa, in a kosher, right? If there's a rova barim sa, it makes no difference. V'chein gag shahaya barosho esrim sa. Let's say there was a roof that had on top of it esrim sa mashahu meg shamim. Let's say, I guess the roof. Let's say the roof had high walls. So now it fills up. Umile b'kseifa, and then you fill the rest with nasan l'sechol pachos me'esrim, and then you mixed it on top of the roof. Then it's pasul because there's no hamshacha. Pasach hatzinor. Then you opened the drain pipe. Then everything drained out derech hamshacha to somewhere else. So raise a mikvah kosher. This is a mikvah kosher. It's like the Mishnah talks about it. On a rainy day, that you have a amma of mayim she'uvim going through some chotzer, and you have rain, like a thing of rainwater, and they mix in the chotzer, and then it all goes into the mikvah. It's going to be okay as long as even though we said before, like the gimel lugim, if there's a shame psul, it has nothing to do. But if there's hamshacha, then that is okay. Shashuva shimshichu kula kshera. As long as shuva your moishich kula kshera holy hayasham rov me'akosher. Now shimshichu kula doesn't mean that it's all Mayim Shuvim, but since it's a mikvah puzzle, it's a shame Shuvim, so then it is going to be kosher. Right. It's called. It's called mikvah shuva because he just poured the water in from the top, at the top. And if you did that into a regular mikvah, that would be shuvi. Hagava im himshich tchila mayim psulim. However, if you were mamshich mayim psulim first, v'achar hevi aleim rov mayim sherim lo mahani. So if you put mayim psulim in first, right, then you put then you put in 20 and a bit. Or you put however much, and you put the kosher, then it's not going to work, like what the Shach points out, unless you went ahead and unless you did Hamshacha. If you did Hamshacha, no, 1 second, I'm sorry. He says even if afterwards you did Hamshacha, that's not going to work, because again, you should get a shame psul, and therefore it's not going to work. Well, there are people who are cholik, but whatever. Al Chapanim, that's the din of the right. Sorry. So the Kiveger brings and says that if you put, this is only if you put 20, let's say 21 saw on top of the she'uvim shem shichua. But if you put a full sheer mikvah on top of it, because it's not, the din is by gimel lugim and mayim psulim. You can't, no matter how much water you put on top, the mikvah is puzzle. But if it's mishim shichua, it lowers its madrega a bit. So therefore you can't bitstarif it to rov, but you can bitstarif it to 40 saw. However, he does bring cholkim. It's tzarchi and ladina. These are different things. Again, the lamaisis is that. It's something to be careful especially to be careful about afal pikeim. Memhei shir hamshacha zu ein pachos megimel tvachim. The shir of hamshacha is not less than gimel tvachim. It's the svara is that I think gimel tvachim it's lavud, right? And therefore anything which is lavud is ki'ilu. It's already inside or next to, or it's already part of the mikvah. So if you do a less than the gimel tvachim, that's not Hamshacha, that's putting it straight into that's already you're pouring it straight into the mikvah. You need more than gimel tvachim. Mem vav ein hamshacha moeles ela agabe karka, agabe tziner shlaya of shem kli. Only works on karka or on a pipe would never have the shem kli betalosh. Vahim himshich agabe kelim, but if you did it on top of kelim, afilu kli galalim. We had before makes no difference what kind of keli it is, even if it's not makabel tuma. Lo havi hamshacha, that's not called hamshacha. Hagav yeshomim the ein hamshacha moelas eladafra gabe karka haruri levloaba. Some say that you cannot use a pipe. That it's only on karka, which is roy levloaba. Again, I mentioned the svara that's kilo, you're reattaching it to the ground. Obviously, the Shulchan doesn't hold that way, but the Ramah understands that. It has to be roy levloa. But if it went over a stone floor, she'en roy levloa ba v'kol shekeni al gabi daf or kli avi she'en a paisa al mikvah lo mahani v'tov lahachmer chachila. And the Ramah says, that even though it's machlokes, but it's tov lahachmer chachila. Discussion about using cement, concrete, whatever, to make to do it. And the Maisa, since it's dirt with other stuff in it, it's called roy livloa, and the minig is to be makel. Those who are machmer, whatever. The minig is to be makel, especially when we're doing it. We're doing it l'chumra, meaning just l'chumra. Anyway, we're not having it. Anyway, the way we're having it, coming to the mikvah is without base kibul or all machmer. So the hamshacha is just extra. Precaution, so it's going to be okay. So I did hear someone telling me that there's a mikveh in New York that they were able to build it with from where the rain comes down the pipe to the mikveh. They were able to build it up so it's actual ground. That they went ahead, instead of doing concrete, they found a way to go ahead and to put I guess leave the foundation, I don't know, all the way down to to karka, have a hole in the foundation all the way down, filled it with dirt, and they were able to go ahead and do a rabbi karka to be even more machmir. Kol kavod. Generally, they just use concrete or cement. A crack is not considered rory levloa just because there's a crack, but I'm not sure it could sink in. I don't know. Mem Zayin, mikvah shenovea v'nisyavish b'kayitz. If you have a mikvah which flows, let's say it's a mayan or something, and it dries out in the summer. V'haya bor rachak mimenu tzatz, and there's a bor near it. Umalu mayim she'uvim, and then you filled it with mayim she'uvim. V'nismalei hamikva mitachas akarka mayosem mayim she'uvim, and in the water, let's say you have a wall of dirt, in between, and the water seeps through the ground into the mikvah. Mitachas akarka mayosem mayim she'uvim, a mikvah kosher. Ki'ilu hu novea. It's ki'ilu. It's fine. It's attached to the ground. It's dafka a mikvah novea is that it's generally one that flows. If it's making shami, it won't necessarily work. That's what the Shach points out.
How much water?
No, here's what Abayim saw.
So once it goes through the ground, it's considered now a mine.
Yeah, it's called novea, and that's gonna be fine.
There's a lot of mine shoes. How much mine shoes?
The whole thing.
You can tell the whole thing.
The whole thing. The Abayim saw in the pit next to it. It's called. It's fine. It's kosher. There's a grow earlier in the Siman which he talks about. They talk about the mechilim tochakarka, that there's water flows in between things underground. And he says, quotes Sifrei HaTeva, which say that sometimes you find fish in boros of mayim because fish are also able to go through the underground water tables and things or whatever. It's interesting the growth Sifrei HaTeva achopanim, but there is we don't know. We don't really know exactly what goes on in the ground, and there's different ways for it to go out. Memches, haba lahamshich mayim lemikvah. Someone who comes to do hamshacha to the mikvah. Tzarich also, for example, when they do snow, when they do a mikvah out of snow, they dump the pile outside the mikvah, and they also do hamshacha into the mikvah. And not like they don't just dump the snow straight into the mikvah. They put it outside Gimel Tvachim, and then let it melt and then flow into the mikvah as well. It has to be. They can't be done on something which is makabel tuma. Could go and make shamim. You wanna divert to make shamim to a different place. Lasas mikvah. Lo yoichas biyadoi daf. Don't take a long wooden board. And don't hold it in your hands. Again, because that's makabel tuma. That's the adam. Eli yaniach hadaf bekarka. Put it on the ground. Yasu yadu misham terem yavru amayim alav. And you have to take your hand away before the mayim gets on it. V'chein silon shamateches, or metal pipe. Also the hamshich b'mayim lemikvah. You can't be mamshich the mayim to the mikvah shemakabel tuma. V'hu shiyu amayim noiflim lehedja v'davar makabel tuma l'socha mikvah. And that's only if it pours straight into the mikvah. Again, according to the Ramah, the Yishomer in the Ramah, this doesn't apply. Because even a pipe, all these things, he says, you should only do it on something which is rory levloa. But upon in the Mechaber Shita, he says you can't, that you don't need that, and you can use pipes. Hushu mayim. I have to remember. I think so. Yeah, it seems to me, Masha. I'd have to open up Kalim. I don't remember Sechus Kalim. I Pshute Klimatchos. I think it is. But I'd have to remember. That's what's mashma over here, Akopanim. So I'll just take his word for it. But if it goes just outside the mikvah, meaning morning gimel tvachim nimshachim l'soichai, then it's nimshach l'soichai. Oh, shemechaber the pia silon shel aver tzidor koton shel eitz. If on the just at the edge of the metal or the lead pipes, you put a little pipe, a little piece of wood, which is oshel cheres, shemayim mekalchim imenu lemikvah kosher. Then it goes. I assume it's gimel tvachim, and then it goes into. I think so. Then from there it flows into the mikvah, even though it flowed through something which is a kabel tuma. But since right before the mikvah it's in something which is not, it's kosher. If the metal pipe is mechuber to the karka, kosher. If you went ahead, if you had a metal pipe which is embedded in the wall, embedded under the ground, things like that, then and it would be okay. Karka. Although it doesn't have to be dug in the karka or not, it's attached, it's okay. And again, according to the Rama before, the chachila shouldn't rely on this. Mem test. And now again, all these things are for mikvah tara, for nashim, all these chumras, mikvah kalim, we're a little more mekel, mikvah kalim also, hamshacha, all these things. But again, mikvah gvarim, I mean, there are many people who are more chassidim or who are very makbid on it. But on Kopanim, it's not as big of a deal. Mem test. That's where it's regular rain. About mamshich mimayan or mikvah if it was a mayan or mikvah kosher, the chashvirim lazeh hamikvah shemamshich hamayim l'seichoi ki idu hu mechuber l'mayan or l'mikvah. Then if the water is pouring out into this pool of water, into this other mikvah, then it's considered mechuber, even though it's flowing downhill, and even if it's not flowing downhill, it's just flowing to the side. It's considered mechuber. Shemamshich hamayim misham yesh b'she'enu mechalik b'kach. And some say afal pikein that you still the hamshacha has to be a gabi karka if you want to go. The case in the Mishnayos, I think, if I remember, is let's say you have on the hillside, you have one mikvah up here and you have a mikvah below, and the question is, can you take a pipe and do like a siphon until from one to the other, but the case is, or else it's on a hilltop. And you go ahead and it flows, small channel, whatever you do, and if it just flows from one to the other, that would be okay according to the shita. Non mikvah shel mekishamim shenifrat echad b'ksalav. If a mikvah of mekishamim that there is one of the walls cracked open, v'mayim yoitzim derech hasedek, and the water is flowing out through the crack. Im yisharbo abayim sa achar sheyatzuk sasan. If let's say underneath the crack there is still a ba'imsa, sha'ada sedek kosher, right? And if there's still a ba'imsa underneath, then the mikvah is kosher. V'imla, but if there's not pasul mishum dahavi le zoichlim, this is nechshav zoichlim. Ve'ein mikvah metahar bezoichlim, and mikvah is not metahar bezoichlim. The fact that the water is flowing out of the mikvah is considered zeichlim. I mean, the Pesach Tshuva talks about people toivel in the mikvah and the water splashes out. We'll see. As long as the water goes back in, generally, even if a little bit stays out, that's not called zeichlim. If the water is draining out of the mikvah, then that whole mikvah is called zeichlim, except by the bottom. V'yesh yesh machmirin afilim yishara b'imsa. Ada sedek, and some are machmer even if they're alabayim sa until the sedek. Ishlachu shedivrei l'chachila listam a sedek. The chachila you should plug it up, patch it up in order to be toivel in it. The chosa dafka b'mikvah she'ena b'ami mayan. That's only obvious, if the mikvah didn't come from a mayan, but he ba mi mayan, ein lachos shechila. So again, because a mayan is kosher b'zechila, so therefore even this is less kosher. Again, like I mentioned, the tziyas mayim is not called zoicher unless it doesn't go back to the mikvah. That doesn't mean the whole mikvah is moving. It's called zechila. Sure, I don't see why not, because it's V'imba listim aesthetic deishi sharba abayim sa, and if you come to go ahead and close it up, so there isn't a bayim, so there's a bayim sa. Lo yistam oisa biyado, you can't close it with your hand, like you totally and you plug it up, with your finger, like the old story in the was it in the Holland in the.
Biyado means you can't use plaster to put it on.
You can plug. No, you can't. You can't put your finger. Lo yisam so biyadav lo kol davar makabel tuma, or anything which is makabel tuma. V'yesh b'shematir listoi b'chol davar shemakabel tuma, and some are matir to do it with something which is makabel tuma, and the minig is not to do like that. Let me just okay. Maybe I'll see if you come a few more. Let me just read the Aleph. I'll discuss the whole thing out. What's again nowadays? The Aleph nikiv a mikvah meimav noitzvim ma'at. If there's a small hole and the water is slowly draining, ma'at, very slowly draining, only flowing the karka ma'at ma'at. Or like the Rashba said, there's a Rashba that says that it's called kosher fishayin zechilasa nikeres. The zechilasa is not nicker. Even though he says the Raya says if you make a mikvah in the ground, it's kosher. The water slowly will get absorbed into the ground. That's not called zechilasa nikeres. So if it drains at the rate of like the karka that it slowly drains out, so that's not called zechilasa nikeres. So to go over how is this nogea to nowadays to modern day mikvos is number one, how they make the walls. They have to be sure that the walls are, the walls are they say that it shouldn't be stopped. So there's a shaila about if you make concrete with what do they call the iron rebar right underneath, is that called stopping? Is that called stopping the mikvah from draining a davar shemakabel tuma? This is the place can discuss. They say the machmirim will make it a very thick wall, put an extra layer on top of like bricks of things which are not makabel tuma. Using a drain. So a lot of mikvahs don't have drains. They have a suction which sucks the water, which goes and sucks the water out. They don't use a drain because a drain. However, how are you plugging the drain up? Right? Metal. What are you using? And you have to make a chol cheshbon that if you're using something which is makabel tuma, then it's going to be a problem. So usually they just use a siphon of some sort. And when it comes to what's called filters, there's the whole discussion about using filters in the mikvos or not to make the water clean. The issue is one, the water keeps on flowing in. Is that called tzchila? Discussion about that. Is it tzchila nikeres or not? Some say because it goes back into the mikvah, it's okay. But some say, well, since a filter is like a swimming pool filter, it's like it goes into a separate container, and then it goes back out. Tzchila goes into a different reshus. It's not just like it jumps out and comes back, but it goes into a kli. Then it goes back. That is problematic. Rabbi has a whole bunch of tshuvas and things, because it was in Russia. They didn't allow him to have a kosher mikvah, so he was matir a swimming pool. He had a lot of tshuvas about it. I think it had a filter, and it was fankulas for the women to use a swimming pool. He himself didn't. He himself was makbid not to, or his wife was makbid not to use it. But al kopanim, they have filters now which they have different types. It's just made with a cloth, and it doesn't make it into a separate reshus. And a whole bunch of kunsim how to make new filters and new ones and different things. And you'll see signs up sometimes around mikvah this, whatever. Talk about men's mikvahs, I don't know, whatever. I don't think a lot of men's mikvahs have filters and not have to be machmir for that. But women's mikvahs there are machmir for, and I even saw quoted from the Netziv that even though the das yachid, we try to be machmir for by mikvahs because it's so recurring. Chopanim with filters, the our mikvahs have filters. But so a person has to check, and you have to ask your Rav or whatever if it's okay to use those mikvahs or not, whatever your hakpanas are.